yes, comics. When I was a kid, I made a lot of comics, like a binder and a container full, and which I found under my bed. So when I was younger, I read a lot of comics growing up, like Dogman, and that kind of sparked ideas for me to make comics. And my first comic was in 4th grade, and I made it with my friend, and it was legendary. And the comic's name was Play with a Droopy Smiley Face. We don't judge about the legendariest comic's name. We don't judge. But it starts off with a stick man named Link, and he's running down the forest, and then he falls into a hole. And in that hole, there was like a cave, but then he starts looking around and finds a chest, and he opens the chest and gets a hat. But then, right behind the chest was a legendary-looking sword. So he goes up to the sword and tries pulling it out with all his might, and it finally came out, and then it snapped in half. Then, after that tragic incident, poor sword, Link hears a sudden scream. Then he starts darting over to the sound, and he sees someone getting attacked by a spider. Then Link attempts to slash at the spider, but the spider has lightning-quick reflexes and catches Link's broken sword and starts swinging him back and forth into the ground. Then the person grabs a rock and throws it at the spider, killing the spider. Then the person thanks Link for saving his life, even though he saved Link's life, and they go their separate ways. But then the person asked to join Link's quest, which, might I ask, where's the quest? I didn't mention it in the comics. Then they introduced themselves to each other, and the person's name was Player, which is an interesting name. Then, fast forward a little bit, they're looking for a sword for Player, and they go into this cave, and they find a sword on the ceiling. And as, Link and Player are trying to get the sword, all of a sudden they hear a sound, and a one-eyed monster comes out of nowhere. Then Player realized something was controlling this one-eyed beast. Then the sword on the ceiling started to loosen a little bit. Then Player and Link slashed together at the monster, and the monster turned into a human. Then Player rushed over to the person, and he joined the squad. The rest of the comic kind of had the trio just kind of exploring the game. They leveled up and got new gear, and they also fought this giant monster, which they vanquished, and also Bill Cipher's in this comic as well. So, Then after making that legendary comic, I gave it to my friend to read, and he thought it was good, I think. Then word got around that I was making comics, and they wanted to read my comics, which I gladly gave them so. And soon after that, more people started making comics, and I wanted to read them, and they were fantastic comics, probably better than mine. Then I moved to a different school. Same process at the new school. I made comics, some people wanted to read them, and someone started making comics. And since I liked comics, I asked the person, hey, can I read your comic? And they didn't answer. They just kind of put their comic paper in their desk, which is kind of odd, but I kind of accepted maybe if they didn't want to share their comics, maybe it's for someone else or something. Then the next day, the person that was making comics challenged me to a comic duel, which I accepted, and a battle was about to commence. It was an intense battle of the century. Papers are flying everywhere, stick men were being drawn, and grammar errors were happening. And as soon as we were done, there was no judge because we didn't know who would judge it, and no one really read comics. So it was basically a draw, and I think I would have lost. But I think the only person that read my comics was that kid that challenged me. And he was the comic. It was called The Endless War. The following year, I was bored one day in my class, and I decided to draw with pen, and that was the birth of an old series called The Pen Comics. And in those set of random comics, there was a character named The Paper Bag. In at least one page of the Pen Comics, Paper Bag would be fighting crime, solving problems, or just getting groceries from his local grocery store, buying eggs. And the rest of the comics were just random stories and weird stuff that my brain came up with. And as time went on, near the second last, in the last one, Paper Bag went crazy and went on a rampage and destroying a world. Then he fought a dragon and that was the end of it. But after making the Pen Comics series, gradually over time, I stopped making and developing comics, and that which is kind of sad because I enjoyed making all those comics, like Play with a droopy smiley face, The Endless War, and the Forbidden Comics under my bed and in my closet that we'll never talk about. And all those comics I made will always have a special place in the back of my brain as an interesting, fun memory. And that's a video about comics! Okay, let's get to recording. Then Link attempts to swing at the spider, but the spider with its lightning McQueen. Then all of a sudden, Link gets hit. Voice crack. Why? Voice crack. Ah! Also, Bill Cipher was also in this comic as well. So, play with a voice crack. Play with a droopy smiley face. Smiley face. Play with a droopy smiley face. I forgot my line.